Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have a special autism mom. Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Kelly and I met a couple weeks ago where you had a retreat for autism moms, and which is since I am trying to do the same thing, I was very interested. I wanted to come and check it out and see how you did things. And I had a really good time. It was a beautiful hotel in Pittsburg, right on the river, all lit up at night. And it was really pretty. All remodeled. Well, it's in the middle of being remodeled, but the rooms were done and it was very nice. I was impressed and I had a really good time. So I wanted to interview you because you don't just do the retreat, you have a whole autism center. And I want to get to that, but let's start the interview like we always do in the very beginning. Since you have a son with autism, let's go all the way back to, first of all, what's his name and how old is he?
His name is Clayton. He is my youngest, and he is 19.
19. Okay. So you said he's the youngest. So you have other kids as well. What are his siblings?
Yeah. 24 and 22.
Girls, boys?
Yeah, they're girls. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 girls and then a boy. Okay. So that's kind of the same as me. I had 2 girls and then like 4.5 years later, I had Robbie. Right. And that kind of plays into the mix because you just think, for me, I thought, wow, boys are really different than girls.
Yeah. There was, touching on that a little bit, you can see the delays or for me, it was going backwards. He went backwards. He did really well till about 18 months. And then it was like, I'd even say like maybe at his first birthday, I saw a response that I wasn't real excited about, there was a lot of different little things. And about when he went for his 2-year checkup and I really started asking the doctor, it was, what do you want him to say? That was the first person. The second person said, we don't worry till he's 3. Oh. Yeah. So it was just different things, waking up at night, just a lot of regression. And we didn't start out like that. We didn't start out slow. We didn't start out not hitting milestones or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. Like, go back to the very beginning when you were first pregnant. Did the doctor see any red flags at your visits? No. And the birth, did that go okay?
Yep.
Everything was fine. And then his development as a baby, crawling, walking, all that was all on time?
Saying his name, he looks at you, smiles at the camera,
Right. Did he speak? Did he have words?
He started to talk. Yeah, he did. He started to talk and, and then he stopped.
Okay. Around that 18-month time?
Yep.
Okay. And that's okay. So he stopped talking. And then did it seem as though he could not hear you or?
Well, he had a couple ear infections and they were pretty severe. So, so it was like, he had a high pain tolerance. I remember the one night he woke up and we couldn't get him calmed down. And my husband took him for a ride in the van and brought him back home. And, he was sleeping and we're like, just leave him in the car seat. We'll just sit here on the couch. Don't mess with him. The next day he was real lethargic, real tired, took him to the doctors and they had bursted. His eardrums had burst. That's how high his pain tolerance was. We had she goes, but the good news is they're already starting to heal. That's how fast he moved, physically. You saw the hills in Pittsburgh, people have hills everywhere, but I mean, they're like this and our backyard's no exception. And he would go straight up that hill. We had no problems, anything like that. Even interacting with his sisters, there was no problem with that. Feeding wasn't an issue. Like we didn't have these issues until after that 18-month mark, and really just going, what happened? Like, why is he doing this? So, he's my 3rd child. I can do this. I could figure this out,
Right.
A lot of my friends would say, well, he has older sisters. He doesn't need to talk. They're answering for him, he's a boy. Boys don't talk. He's just quiet. Your husband's quiet. Like, and I'm sitting there going, what? Like, none of this adds up. Like, this is not the case, you know?
Right.
And then started to take it to the doctors, and that's where you hit the same wall there. And it was so frustrating.
The pediatrician didn't pick up on anything either.
So I was in a practice of 5 doctors. So I'd always have like a different person, no matter what the, you know, so finally I had a girl that was younger, and I started telling her everything. And she's like, okay, I think he needs an evaluation. And I was like, okay, what kind? Like, you know, she's like a psychological. And I'm like, really? Like, you don't think it has something to do with his hearing? Or, and she's like, no, I think it's a little bit more. So that took about 6 months. So when, to get that appointment. So that was at his 3rd birthday, 2006, March 2006, his annual checkup. August 2006, we went to the child development unit here at Pittsburgh, and they told us pretty quickly that he had autism. No idea what autism was. I had heard about it. There, like you touched on a little bit in your presentation, there was no computers, there's no Facebook, there's no phones. I wasn't looking for anything. I was busy raising my other children and managing him. And so we left there that day, and just, I remember my husband especially saying, is this something he's going to get over? Like, is he going to get better? Like, you know, we didn't understand that this wasn't something. And the doctor said, he's probably not going to speak ever. And I was like, well, he was speaking. And he goes, well, that's where the concern comes in. The lady at the front desk will have more information from you, you know? We went out there, and they handed, like, I don't know how it is where you're up. They handed us like this phone book of providers, and suddenly he needed state insurance and all these things. And we're just standing there, just, you know, like, what is this? We get on this elevator, and just, that's it, we're leaving, right? You know? And we got in the van, and I remember sitting in that van, and our air conditioning broke, and it was August. So it's sweltering hot, and we had like leather seats, and we were stuck in rush hour traffic. And Clayton loved being in the car. He loved being strapped in. He loved that pressure. He loved being, so it did not bother him one bit. I'm miserable. My husband's miserable. We have this diagnosis. We have no idea what's going on. And there's our county jail is like right there. And I remember looking up at that jail and being like, I feel just as stuck as they are. Like, just, I felt like I was worse coming out of there, and not empowered, and not, I didn't have any more answers than I did going in. I felt more concerned and more scared than ever in my life when dealing with one of my children. It was very hard. And I'm sure you remember that day too. You know, it's just, it's the most, it feels like the rug's pulled out from underneath of you.
I was so naive though, you know, because Robbie had ear infections, we put him in early intervention at Summit Speech School, which was for hearing impaired kids. So I'm sitting here thinking, we'll get tubes in his ears, it'll fix his hearing, he'll get some speech, and he'll start kindergarten with everybody else. You know, and then when they said he's delayed, I'm like, okay, he's delayed, but eventually he'll catch up. You know, like I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. And I was like having 2 other children like yourself, you know, like my middle daughter was so far advanced compared to my oldest daughter. You know what I mean? Like, so I knew everybody developed differently.
Right.
So it's confusing, you know, and then we started with the people coming into the home to assess him, and, you know, and like you, I was like, they came in, you know, they have their little pencil skirts on and stuff, and trying to talk to them and sit on the floor. And I go, I've done all that. Like, it doesn't work, you know? And the one lady looked at me, and she just kind of smiled. And I said, if you can get him to talk, I'm good. I just need him to talk. And she's like, yeah, no, you know, like trying to be gentle. And then they came back with like his development, and then the speech came in, and at first she thought he had apraxia. That was one of the first things. And she's like, that's better than autism. You'd rather him have that. And I'm like, I want him to have anything, you know, and that wasn't it either. So, I mean, and then it just went on from there, you know, the specialized schools, arguing with schools, understanding coming to the quick understanding that just because you send them to school doesn't mean they understand autism. Just because they're in a special education classroom or a life skills classroom doesn't mean they understand autism. You're now trying to educate the world about something you're learning as you go. Yeah. And, you know, that, I think that has been the biggest frustration, and it still is today. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing. So
where did he go to school?
So the very first year he was in kindergarten, and I went and I started to learn about free and appropriate education. I started to do my research, and our local school district didn't have a sensory room, and Clayton was very sensory driven. So by that, I don't know if Robbie had this, but like if I put him in the bathtub, he would make direct eye contact with me and he would eat. And I would sit there and cry and feed him in the bathtub, and I would cry and I'd look at him and I'd be like, why can't I, you know, do this? And then I'd get him out of the tub and I'd dress him and he'd rip all of his clothes off and run outside. And, you know, it was all this sensory things. So, you know, he hadn't slept through the night at that point. He was 5 years old, 5.5. And I finally had an OT come in and explain to me sensory issues and how Clayton was missing them and what it looked like and all that complicated things. But once we understood it and got his body regulated, he slept through the night. And I remember thinking, he must have ran away because I didn't wake up with him. And I said to my husband, did you wake up with him? And he's like, no. And we both like jumped up and went flying in the bedroom, and there he was. He was still in the same position we put him in. But he finally got some of that regulation. So I knew going into school, he needed that sensory regulation. So I went to the school and I was like, oh, do you have a sensory room? And they're like, no. And I said, well, he's going to need one. And they're like, no, we're not going to put one in. And I was like, well, you know, you're breaking the law. And they're like, no, we're not. Like, we don't have the room. They had all these. So I met with like the superintendent, the special ed director. Nobody did anything. I didn't know that I could make them pay for a school that had a sensory room. And I just did my own thing. I thought, you know, I'm not putting up with it. So paid over $500 a month for him to go to a private school, St. Anthony's program here in Pittsburgh. They understood autism. They had a sensory room. They regulated him, taught him how to be a student. And I was out one day at a local restaurant, and this mom came up to me and said, are you Kelly Cain? And I said, yeah. And she's like, they have sensory rooms in all the schools at the high school. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. So starting in first grade, he went back to our home school district, and he always had one-on-one aid with him moving forward.
I'm very interested in what you're talking about, what the OT said to you about the sensory and how it helped to regulate his sleep, because I wish I had somebody like that. I mean, for me, the answer was to give him medication, you know?
Yeah. So what she taught me was about the proprioceptive system and the vestibular system. So the proprioceptive system is all like deep pressure.
Yep.
So like,
he loved deep pressure. He got the best eye contact when he jumped on the trampoline.
Right. So we had trampoline for years. So deep pressure, being surrounded by water.
Yes.
That's why he would look at me. So she explained to me, when those systems are broken, it's like an electrical wire. So it's split in half, but once they receive the correct input, it's like the wire goes back together and they can focus and pay attention to what you need. And when those systems are broken, you're like all over the place, right? You can't, you know, for me, I kind of described it as like, don't talk to me till I have my first cup of coffee. Like anything you say to me before then, it's not going to matter. But after I get my cup of coffee, I'm okay. You know, kind of like that. The vestibular system is, you know, when you have a baby and you put them in the swing and they quit crying.
Yeah.
It's that rocking motion feeds the vestibular system. Swaddling them as a baby feeds the proprioceptive system, and that's how they go to sleep. So even though I would lay Clayton down and he was tighter than he could be, right? Tight as a button, you know, I'd lay him down, do all that. His system was in such need that he needed a weighted blanket. He needed a body pillow. He needed to feel like he was in a cocoon, you know? So I did all that as a baby. You rock him, you put him down. But then when they get bigger, 18 months, right? 2 years old, you're like, you need to learn how to sleep by yourself. You don't need a swing anymore. You don't need this. Those systems actually didn't get fed. So everything appeared to fall apart, you know?
Right.
footed pajamas, body pillows, weighted blankets, all these vestibular activities. And that actually helps with auditory processing and sound and smell, because I would go into a store and he would fall down on the ground. He would look at everything and just hit the ground. But if we gave him a sucker, that was deep pressure. A milkshake was deep pressure. Anything in a straw. Also, the noise from the sucker would take away the outside noise of the grocery store. Because you know how you can only hear what's in, sucker in your mouth. So there was all these tips and tricks she gave me. And once we got that down, he slept through the night. Like it was.
So did you like go through a routine before you went to sleep, or?
So that sensory diet was throughout the day. So I spent every 2 hours, I fed his sensory system. So I wasn't working. So we would get up in the morning and she came on, I think she came on in October. And the first thing we did was got a swing in our basement, and a mini trampoline. And an exercise ball. And we started with the proprioceptive system because we're inside. It's October, we're inside.
Right.
And then the deep pressure was us putting pillows under our shirts and bumping into him. And like every 2 hours, I did something to feed one of those systems, because after 2 hours, it wears off. For him, it did. So after that, it seemed to really calm him down. You could plan things in that would be like, okay, his input's wearing off. We got to get back home, right? You know, like you could plan to go out to eat. You knew what would calm him down in a restaurant. And it was so much of it was sensory driven with him. And he still has sensory issues today, but he can manage them. He's not hitting the floor now. He's not flipping a table over in the classroom, or, you know, telling somebody to shut up, or, you know, it comes out as behaviors, especially in the classroom and other places. And it makes it look like a behavior when it's really this input that they're lacking. But when you can't talk, he looked like a really bad kid, you know? So she put us on that sensory diet, and then she was always part of our IEP meetings and told the school what he would need for the day. In between.
Wow. I wish I had somebody like her.
And Robbie wasn't that much older than Clayton, right?
No, he'd be 32.
He'd be 32.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Well, how old is he?
Clayton's 19. I didn't realize that he was that much older. 12 years older. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had, I'm trying to think, he had OTs at school, but they never talked to me. They never explained anything to me.
Yeah, this was outside OT. I really credit our wraparound service that came in. She was very straightforward with me, just straight out of college, had her master's, and I would say something to her and she'd be like, nope, you're thinking the wrong way.
Wow.
You know, she goes, he cannot change, Kelly. You have to change.
Yeah.
And so it was still, we all did. And
you do change, that's for sure.
Yeah, it changes you. There's no going back. Especially if you embrace the diagnosis and do what needs to be done instead of fighting it. You know, it makes a difference in their life, especially.
And that is the difference between a 32-year-old kid that was diagnosed and a 19-year-old, because it's a complete mind shift. Because when Robbie was diagnosed, it was all about curing the autism and getting them to change and fit into our world. And they can't.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, and I think, you know, even now, even as much knowledge as I have and all the resources I have and all the connections I have, I still find myself floating, you know, sometimes fumbling around. You know, I had a meeting with the school that he attends the other day, and I was still advocating for him, fighting for him, because there's just this, oh, well, it sounds great and positive. And I'm like, well, it's really not, you know, like he's 19 and this still isn't the goal. You know, we haven't hit the goal yet. And it feels like it constantly moves. You hit one goal and it just feels like the marker gets a little bit further every time. Where with your older children as mine, you could see them hit the goal. You know what I mean? You hit those milestones and they're over, and then it's like up to them. With us, it feels like it's always like this moving, you never catch it, you know?
The moving target. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, that would be the most difficult.
Yeah. And also another difference is that therapists come to the house now, where we didn't have any of that either. You know, people have ABA therapists.
Insurance
and OTs
covering
and stuff.
anything then? Did you have
That
insurance?
was all at his school. Everything was in his school.
Wow.
Mhm.
And there was none of that communication back, like, here's the plan, do this at home, it'll help us here at school. Did you have those things?
No.
No.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
You know, it pains me to hear your story and what's happened to you. And I've seen kids that are 3 and 4 years older than Clayton that started out like him, but never progressed because they didn't have the resources either. And I always say, if he would have been born earlier, we wouldn't have the same outcome. I have always said that. I think that we would be in a lot different situation right now than we are, honestly. Even though things aren't perfect in the autism world still, I know that his life would be even more challenging than it is today if we didn't have what we had. If he wasn't born when he was born, you know, it would be different.
Right. And I hope that it continues to get better.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm shocked with like what we learned, you know, at the conference and what some of the moms learned. It was sad to me that they still didn't have these things, and felt good at the same time to give them, you know? So it was like it was just different. It was frustrating at one point and then happy for them at the next, and not knowing if they realize how much they have gained from everybody that's come before them, right?
It helps me be hopeful for the ones with the 5-year-olds. It unfortunately, it's because autism is so huge now that I think people are learning more and more and more. And they're, you know, like, it sounds to me like even the OTs know more about autism now than they used to. You know?
And I wonder if it's more huge now, or if this is just something that we're just so all connected now that everybody knows now. Do you know what I mean? Like with the internet and, you know, social media and TVs and cable and stuff, do you just now know? Because, you know, I even think back to my high school when I think about the kids that were in the classroom and they had the paper over the windows, and they were in a different learning level than I was. And, you know, they were labeled as bad or not as smart. What was it really? You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, I definitely.
You know?
I always
So
say
I
that. I'm like,
wonder
I'm sure that those kids were autistic and we just didn't have a name for it.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, and like, because I remember I was friends with some, you know, friends with some of them, and outside of that environment, they were fun. I'd hang out with them, we'd go do things, but in school, they were in these classrooms that were just seemed like barbaric, you know, to me. So it just makes me wonder, and the numbers rising. I understand what you're saying too. But I'm
just saying, I think that it's making me think that when someone goes to school to become an occupational therapist, it's now becoming part of the curriculum to learn more about how to work with autistic kids. Whereas 20 years ago, it was probably more generalized, you know?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You know, because I interviewed someone that she works at NYU, the dental school, and now it's become part of the curriculum that you have to learn how to work with special needs patients and autistic patients, where
that's amazing.
That was never a thing before.
That's amazing. And, you know, I think I got lucky with ROT. Her name was Melissa. I haven't seen her since. There's not too many OTs that are in school that will agree that there's still sensory issues at a high school level. A lot believe that you grow out of them. It's like, nope, he needs a swing. Like he still needs a swing. So
yeah.
I mean, there's just, and they did it. They accommodated them, but it's still not widely accepted that these issues that can really help you get through your day, like a cup of coffee, or somebody that smokes, you know, they're like, I'll do that right after I have this cigarette, or, you know, as soon as I get done working out at the gym, I'm going to be able to do that. This is the same feeding process as that, you know, and I really, for Clayton anyways, it really helped regulate his thought process.
Good. So is he in a public school now or private or what? Where is he now?
So he goes to, it's called BCRC. It's like they call it a rehabilitation center. I don't know why it's called that. It's for high school children and then kids up to the age of 21. And what he does is he went there, they gave him an assessment, they found his interests, and then they take him to different job sites and try to find him a job within his community. So he'll go and job shadow, he'll do volunteer work. Like he went to the Salvation Army, he's gone to a hotel to job shadow, and then they have social opportunities, which they lack after high school. And then he will also study for his driver's license. So
he graduated then at 18.
Yes.
He didn't go till he was 21?
No, he's 19. So this,
Yeah, but maybe it's different in Pennsylvania, but if you are classified, then, you go till you're 21.
yeah, he could have.
Okay.
But this program was available to him. So
Okay.
we
Okay.
did this. So he goes to this program. He will do like extended school year, they call it, and he'll go throughout the summer, and it's all social opportunities. In the fall, he'll start going further, like 3 days a week, and he'll do one-on-one and job shadowing, and then like a volunteer piece. And it's helping him with his social skills is really what he needs.
Does he speak or no?
He does. Yeah,
he can. Okay.
Yeah, he talks, and
Okay.
he talks very well. He was nonverbal till he was about 8, and then we did speech, and I should say we did language really until he was 13. That was our longest approach, because he did good in elementary school, seemed to be, and then he hit 6th grade, and like things he should have known and understood didn't carry over. Wasn't sure if it was the new building, the new teachers, you have to wait all this out. Then he quit, didn't want to go to school when he was in 6th grade, just protested for about 2 weeks, would not go. Really struggled. 6th grade was really hard. In hindsight, I wish I would have kept him home and done homeschool in middle school, but I was trying to, socially, I wanted him to be there because he enjoys being alone. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. That's his goal. After that 2-week protest, we had to send him back like for 1st and 2nd period. And then we added on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd period. And then we added, just slowly got him back into school. He was still started to have like educational issues where he wasn't grasping things. And the language teacher was just out of school there, another girl that was just out of school. And she literally looked at me and said, "I can do more for your son than you're letting me." And I was like, and I've never had anybody say that to me, like really in that setting anyways. So I called her and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "It's language. He's a late talker. I think you should do another assessment." So we went to a clinic here. So when they did the assessment for that, anybody that's been through speech knows they did all the flip cards, right? Without the word, Clayton was 8 years old, where he was when he started talking. But if you gave him the word, he was actually 21. So they would show him, like, she said to him, now he's 11, right? And she's like, "How do you brush your teeth?" And he goes, "Well, you take the stuff and you put it on the thing, and then you turn that thing and you put it under the stuff that comes out." And I'm sitting there like crying, like, how is he getting through school if he doesn't know toothpaste, toothbrush, water? You know what I mean? So when they did all the assessments, everything, it came back that this language deficit, he had it all in there. He just didn't know how to have it come out. Even watching a movie, they would sit there and watch like clips with him and really break down facial expressions and how this person's feeling and that person's feeling. And, then they integrated his homework. Like, this is your vocabulary words. What do you think this word means? Like, they really got through it with him and brought him up to where he needed to be. So he did rather well in high school, and was able to graduate. Didn't really need an aid. He still had his aid because of the sensory and trigger issues. He still didn't have that emotional intelligence to like take a step back. He would just get up and walk out of the classroom. If he got frustrated, he was like, "I don't need to do this. I'm out of here." And he would just get up and walk out, I'd be like, well, you got to stop him from doing that. But it was the way work was presented. So we had this whole different challenge in high school: presentation of work, speech and language consulted on every test to make sure it was presented to him in a way they could get out what he knew, because he would fail without it. So that was really a big piece for him. Things that you wouldn't think were huge. Speech and language and OT were the biggest helpers with him, for sure.
So he's in this program now. So what kind of things does he like to do? You said they assessed him to see what he likes.
Public safety and security.
Really? I thought you were going to say video games.
Oh, he does like to do that.
Yeah.
For sure. But that was like what they gave him for the test. It was public safety and security. So I guess he can now go shadow like a security company that maybe works at a mall or, a movie theater, and understand what they do. So that'll be in the fall. He'll start.
Does he have an understanding of danger? Okay, that's it for part 1. Be sure to tune in for part 2. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's episode. Be sure to join us again next time to hear the second half of the interview on Spectrum Perspectives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just because that's one of those signs of autism is that they don't have an understanding of danger. So if he wants to be in security, he needs that.
When he was younger, he didn't. You know, I lost him plenty of times. I did code at him more times than I can count. He took off all the time and did not care. But now that he's older, like I said, he does not care to leave the house. When the pandemic hit, he was so happy. He came downstairs and he came like, I don't have to leave the house. You can't make me. It's a law. I don't have to go. I don't have to go anywhere. And I was like, what? It was like horrible, right? It fed it. Then actually his senior year, he wanted to go back because it was so hard for him to do school at home. So he went back September 2020. It was good for him because everybody walked in the way they had the school set up, everybody walked in the same direction. Everybody had a mask on. There was no social opportunities. You had to sit at your desk by yourself, even for lunch. So he had no problem going to school. And they were like, every meeting, they were like, he's doing great. I'm like, isn't this great? Like, I mean, he did his work. He showed more of what he could do probably in that senior year than anything. And yeah, it was validated his diagnosis for sure.
That is funny. That's so funny. Yeah. Everybody else worries about what COVID did to socialization for kids, and he's loving it.
He was having a blast. Yeah. And I just kind of stayed with that. It kept me kind of busy. It wasn't a paid position, just volunteer work. So I really, really liked it. I never really went back to work because of Clayton. Every time I started a job, I would have to quit or, you know, I do until it ran out. And I was in nursing prior to this. So I knew that commitment, that's not a field you call often, you know? So it wasn't fair to anybody that I worked for to even try to do that. So I just did little jobs. I found a publication called the Autism Notebook. It's out of Florida now. It was out of Pittsburgh. I worked for them for a little bit, and I really got to know a lot of the autism community, met a lot of fabulous people at vendor shows, conferences, and represented that company for a while. And I met a woman there through one of my associations. She asked me to start a nonprofit, and I was like, nope, not doing it. Nope. She's like, come on. So finally we did. And her vision was the same as mine. She had a child on the spectrum, older than Clayton, but she saw the same deficits that I was seeing working for another nonprofit. And we were like, there's no this, there's no that, there's no this, there's no that. And so we kind of came up with this mission to just fill those gaps, fill what was missing. There was always something for Clayton, but there wasn't always something for the whole family. There wasn't always something for us all to feel included. And like the little organization that had pals kind of did that because we invite everybody to come, you know what I mean? So I kind of understood what she wanted to do there. Advocacy, and I knew the importance of that because I wouldn't have made it through any schooling without an advocate, but so many families can't afford that. So that was one of our big things in training businesses. Those were the first 3 things that we were like, absolutely, this is what we got to do. And so we started October 2017 and just started out like in our minds at libraries, holding meetings, getting speakers to come, meeting parents, doing some advocacy. We did trainings for businesses right away. That was a big thing. And then she kind of had to step away. For some other reasons.
Back up. You just blew right over that. Doing trainings for businesses. What kind of trainings? Who was doing it?
Yeah. So my partner at the time, Heidi, and I, we offered training to anybody that would want it. And we would design it based on their business. So one of the first ones we did was Pittsburg Botanical Gardens. It's like a conservatory, but it's outside. And they hosted a lot of schools, and they wanted to know how to support people with disabilities that came through, especially since it was outside. So we had to look at we were like, oh, well, you know, you're going to have a challenge here and you're going to have a challenge here. And then we explained autism. So we would walk them through what autism is, signs to look for, how the parents might be feeling, how they can help support the parents without really pressing. So it just depended on who we were training, you know, and then
were you, I'm trying to think like other parents, were you thinking, I'm not qualified to do this, I'm not a blah, 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 or you were just doing it through your own experience or what?
Yeah. So I had that, but Heidi, my partner Heidi was like, she's like, oh no, she's like, we're totally qualified. Like, she's like, and I said, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, we have the resources to put the information together. You know, we're parents, and who better to get your training from?
Okay, so tell me about the Autism Caring Center. What is it? How did you start it? Why did you start it? All those things.
Yeah. So when Clayton was 9, a local mom approached me and said, we had gone to school together, and her son had Down syndrome, and she was like, I want to work with the township to create some social opportunities for these kids. So we started this little organization called PALS. It's called Providing Assistance, Love, and Support. So no matter what your disability was, or, you know, your extra ability, or we had like a big picnic, and we had all these families sign up, and the township supported us. And so we would have Friday nights, and people would come and they would just play in the gym with the local football team from the high school, hockey. And I really enjoyed it. It was really good to get out, meet other parents that were going through similar things. And I just kind of stayed with that. It kept me kind of busy. It wasn't a paid position, just volunteer work. So I really, really liked it. I never really went back to work because of Clayton. Every time I started a job, I would have to quit, or, you know, I'd do until it ran out. And I was in nursing prior to this. So I knew that commitment, that's not a field you call often, you know? So it wasn't fair to anybody that I worked for to even try to do that. So I just did little jobs. I found a publication called the Autism Notebook. It's out of Florida now. It was out of Pittsburgh. I worked for them for a little bit, and I really got to know a lot of the autism community, met a lot of fabulous people at vendor shows, conferences, and represented that company for a while. And I met a woman there through one of my associations. She asked me to start a nonprofit, and I was like, nope, not doing it. Nope. She's like, come on. So finally we did. And her vision was the same as mine. She had a child on the spectrum, older than Clayton, but she saw the same deficits that I was seeing working for another nonprofit. And we were like, there's no this, there's no that, there's no this, there's no that. And so we kind of came up with this mission to just fill those gaps, fill what was missing. There was always something for Clayton, but there wasn't always something for the whole family. There wasn't always something for us all to feel included. And like the little organization that had PALS kind of did that, because we would invite everybody to come, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I kind of understood what she wanted to do there. Advocacy, and I knew the importance of that, because I wouldn't have made it through any schooling without an advocate, but so many families can't afford that. So that was one of our big things. In training businesses. Those were the first 3 things that we were like, absolutely, this is what we got to do. And so we started October 2017 and just started out like in our minds at libraries, holding meetings, getting speakers to come, meeting parents, doing some advocacy. We did trainings for businesses right away. That was a big thing. And then she kind of had to step away. For some other reasons.
Back up. You just blew right over that. Doing trainings for businesses. What kind of trainings? Who was doing it?
Yeah. So my partner at the time, Heidi, and I, we offered training to anybody that would want it, and we would design it based on their business. So one of the first ones we did was Pittsburg Botanical Gardens. It's like a conservatory, but it's outside. And they hosted a lot of schools, and they wanted to know how to support people with disabilities that came through, especially since it was outside. So we had to look at we were like, oh, well, you're going to have a challenge here, and you're going to have a challenge here. And then we explained autism. So we would walk them through what autism is, signs to look for, how the parents might be feeling, how they can help support the parents without really pressing. So it just depended on who we were training, and then
were you, I'm just trying to think like other parents, were you thinking, I'm not qualified to do this, I'm not a blah, 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 or you were just doing it through your own experience, or what?
Yeah. So I had that, but Heidi, my partner Heidi, was like, she's like, oh no, she's like, we're totally qualified. Like, she's like, and I said, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, we have the resources to put the information together. We're parents, and who better to get your training from? Who better to answer those questions? Who else is putting it together? Who else is doing it? And we started doing it, and it is so validating, and it is so, I love to do it. I could train all day. It's so rewarding, because that after you train that group or that business, they're not just going to keep it at work. They're going to, like you said, so many people are affected now with autism. Mm-hmm. Somebody in the family, maybe their son, their daughter, they might learn a little bit more than they knew before they came to the training.
So what kind of things would you do at the botanical gardens, for instance? Like, what did you tell them? Like how to recognize what?
So we first explained what autism was. We first explained what it does to your system. So like we explained the definition. We explained sensory issues that they might have, especially being outside. Mm-hmm. How they can better mark their property with visual schedules and signs to help people that are coming. How to support a parent in need, where hot spots might be for somebody to run to because of the danger. So if there's any water on their property, or, an area without a fence, they could, know that if they were looking for somebody, that's the direction they would go. Just really tailoring it to what their needs were. And most of them were guides that were going to be doing the tours. You know what I mean? And how many guides should we have that day? Like, when do we step in? Like, when do we not step in? And just really answering those tough questions, because how thoughtful of that business to want to know, mm-hmm. Right? How thoughtful of them to care. And that was 5 years ago. How thoughtful of them to think, oh, okay, we're opening this up and we're going to need to know how to handle these diverse groups that come in. And so it was an honor when we were asked to do it. And then somebody else heard about it. So we trained, we did a baseball team, like a minor league baseball team here, mm-hmm. in the area. And then we did training for some paraprofessionals in schools, and just really tailored it to whoever asked, but always keeping that same thing, the diagnosis, the sensory issues, because they apply everywhere, but then changing it up based on the situation that you're in. So mm-hmm. That's the really sweet part when you're making a difference like that. Yeah. So the trainings have been a really huge part of what we do. And then we have an actual center. It's only 1,000 square feet, but we hold things here, recreational activities. So sensory friendly Santas. We'll do, I wanted to do the Easter Bunny, but I decided not to. We did like a pumpkin painting. Everybody got a pumpkin. They could come in and paint. We had a food truck parked outside. And it's just something about knowing that you're in a safe space. Something about knowing that you don't have to make an excuse for your child that's on the floor, for your kid that just ran out the front door, for your kid that just hit your other kid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. You're safe here. And that's what was missing in our community, a true hub, right? Like somewhere you can go. Like when you break your arm, you go to the doctors. When you don't feel good, you go to the emergency room. We don't have a hub as parents with autism. We don't have a place that we can pick up the phone and call and be like, now what? Or I need a break today and I can't go to the mall and hang out with typical kids. Where do I go? What can I do? Where can I just go have a cup of coffee and not have to say anything? So that was kind of the idea in back of the Autism Caring Center, was just to create a community that feels inclusive, and then try to get the community that we're in to be inclusive also by providing the trainings. Mm-hmm. So just really building that awareness and moving forward.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to know. So you started in the library. right? Doing some
Yeah.
meetings, but eventually you got a place.
Yeah.
So did you fundraise to do that, or?
Yes. Yeah. So we had, we created our board, came up with a name, created mission and vision statement, found our board, really involved, people that were parents, doctors, that saw the deficit in the community and kind of agreed with what we were trying to do. We did a lot of private fundraising to be able to open the doors. We probably would have opened sooner, but because of COVID, everything got pushed back a couple years. And there was blessings in that too, because I met a lot of parents that year that just finally understood what an IEP was and what was missing and how hard it was to educate their child. And I thought they were at this level, they were at that level. So there was a lot of blessings in there. Did a lot of networking on Zoom, did a lot of trainings on Zoom, learned everything about Zoom. So it was, there was a lot in there that allowed us to really even find our niche even more, moving forward, even hearing more from parents about what they needed. As to if we would have just kept with our model, which we have, we might have got distracted in one bucket or another, either the training bucket or just doing center stuff, where the resources bucket, having that connection with other parents. And what you attended, the conference, the very first thing Heidi and I both talked about was the fact that we would be home all day on a Monday and nobody to talk to, even if your child was at school, you couldn't work. So you're like on this, I call it Autism Island. And we were like, we need to get everybody off the island. So the first event we ever had was the Mother's Day brunch. And it was just a free brunch for people to come have lunch, hear a motivational speaker, do some raffle baskets. We made everybody like a swag bag, like with a magazine, a local magazine, coupons, just, things to just, and hopefully that they'd meet other people. And that's what grew into the conference. So that's how that all got started. But yeah, it's been very rewarding to just to give back what and educate other people as well.
What things do you do at the center besides, I know you have you bring the Santa and whatever. That's
holiday activity.
But what do you do the rest of the year? What do you do?
So we just started in October. So we just,
So it's very new.
So we just opened in October. Yeah. So October was like an open house, pumpkin painting, Lego night, sugar cookie making, like we did everything. We had speakers in between. So we had a speaker come out and talk about special needs trust. That was the topic. And that came from the parents that came here. What do you want to talk about? Special needs trust. Got it. Cooking, we did the make your own pizza. We've done the sugar cookie baking. We have a lady here in our community that has a Kona ice truck. In her background is special needs, and she wanted to employ people with special needs. So she came in and talked about what it would look like to work with her. They got to see the truck, just resources, and I've just kind of let the community lead you into what they need. And
so you just keep scheduling different activities for nights, weekends, whatever.
Yep. For Autism Awareness Month and for the conference, I didn't have the center open for the month of April because we were just so out in the public. And with the end of school and vacations, we've just been open at night, and it's just pop in. You could just pop in and pick up information, talk to me, use the sensory room, hang out, watch TV, whatever you want to do. Now that school's over for us, it'll be over in 6 days around here. We'll be open almost every day just to let people come in and take a break. And, maybe it's their new routine, coming to the center and having a cup of coffee or getting a drink or hanging out with a friend.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know what's in there. So if you're doing cooking classes, I guess you have a kitchen.
We have a stove.
Okay.
We have a stove. We went and bought little toaster ovens for the kids to use, like little, not like a little, the bigger toaster ovens that you see you can buy. We bought a couple of those and did the baking that way. The kids really like to paint. We did girls' night, guys' night. Guys' night was pizza. We did movie night with Spider-Man. I mean, we just do things that the kids ask for too. The next big thing is they want to dance, and yeah, they've all asked to dance. And so sensory friendly dance is probably on the agenda. maybe for the fall. It's been fun and inspiring when the people come through the door. I'll be honest. I mean, I've been in this community a long time, like you, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if I'm wrong? What if nobody wants to come to a center and paint a pumpkin and meet another parent? What if I'm wrong? I'm gonna have to give all this money back. I'll just donate it to another charity, you know. I just started thinking, and then there hasn't been a time where we haven't ran out of room. So, you know.
So do people, like, will they pay for the cooking class when they come?
Everything's free.
Everything's free.
Everything's free. And that's why we fundraise. It's not for anything else for them. So it's all given back locally. And the training's free too. If they want to make a donation, they can, but we do not charge for training, especially our first responders in our schools. We do not charge for that. They're too vital to put a price tag on learning about how to save an autistic child from a burning building. I trained 2 fire departments this year, and that was so special. Their questions were, you know, you're talking to some people that never even heard the word. And, you know, 45 minutes ago, they understood the word. And now they're saying, oh, I should do this. Like, it just clicks. And it just shows you, like, it's just so small and just such a short amount of time, how much of a difference you can make, you know? And it's so important. It's really important to do. So,
my potential listeners are parents all over the country, not just, you know, where we are. And I've seen on some of the autism pages that some parents want a place like this. I've seen them in New Jersey saying that they wish there was a center that they could go to. A lot of them have younger kids, and they want, you know, a place to go. But they're also longing for friendships. You know, they'll just say, hey, is there anybody that lives near me that just wants to get together for coffee or lunch or something, you know? And so the reason why I wanted to have you on was to find out how you did this so that you could inspire other parents to do it as well. And they can start their own center in, you know, Arizona or wherever, you know, other places besides where you are. And it's funny because that's how that's business advice that I give other people. I'm like, you have to start with renting a church or at a library or something like that first. Start getting your potential people, and then you work up to renting a space.
Yeah, I think, Cindy, it really just starts with a decision. I think once you make the decision and you put enough time and effort into it, it'll happen, just like anything else. Like once you decide you're going to change your hair color, you make the appointment, you go get your hair color. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to make it sound simple, because it's not. And it's a lot of hard work. And people need to get off social media and get in person. We have a ton of, in here where I'm at, there's a ton of social media pages with all these parents on it asking for the simplest advice and longing for friendship and longing for companionship. And that was the point of the Mother's Day brunch, is like, we can admit it. We all need like a friend. Like, it's okay to say, I can't do this. It's okay to say my son doesn't talk, or he's 15 and still wears diapers. I mean, it's okay to say that here. You can't say that in certain crowds, or if you do, it's not, nobody knows how to respond to you. So, you know, the advice would be to just do it. I mean, to try to find somebody that is just as passionate as you are about what you want to see come to life, and then do it. You know, create your mission statement, create your vision statement, you know, start at the library, you know, have a speaker at a library and see who comes, meet those parents, have them get their email lists. And, you know, it is a business. I didn't think of it that way when we first started. I was just like, oh, this is going to be fun. Yeah, I'm just going to tag along. It's really Heidi's idea. I'm just going to follow. And now, you know, she had to step away for other reasons. So now here I am going, oh, okay, I got to get busy. You know what I mean? To see it fulfilled. And she was at the conference. So it was really nice for her to see it grow so much as well. And I think that to just, I know it sounds cliche, but to just do it. You're going to have done more. You know, I always think to myself, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And I think, you know, you've done more than anybody else right now at this point, you know, in the community. Like, you can't, and I don't mean more than anybody else, that kind of came out wrong. I mean, like, if you stopped today, or you had to stop and do it, at least you've done this much. You know, you've helped this many people. So even if only 10 people show up or 5 people show up, that's 5 people. That's somebody's mom that you just helped. That's somebody's sister that you just helped. The impact's bigger than you think. I wouldn't, 5 people doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. It probably affected 25 to 30 people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Having something like this is peace of mind for your community. So I would definitely encourage anybody to do it.
What do you do for fundraisers? Did I ask you that?
So we've had one, the president of, well, he's not president of our board. We don't really have those titles, but he's a big part of our board. He has a fundraiser that he started before he was even on our board. He had a son that was diagnosed with autism, saw really great effects of therapy, realized that he had access to services that others might not. So he would have a fundraiser and give all the money back to a local charity. So he gave some of it one year to Autism Speaks, a couple other service providers. And then when he found out about the center, he's given it to us the past 4 years. Yeah. So every year now, this is called the Summer Fade Away Festival. His daughter had, she was drawing artsy, and he's like, what are you doing? And she said, I wish his autism would fade away just like summer. So that's why it's called the Summer Fade Away Festival. And every year it has got bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people come. It's free. At one end, there's a concert, and like pub tables are set up to have drinks and snacks. At the other end, it's kids activities. And in the middle, there's vendors, face painting, a balloon artist, just like a fun festival. So whether you have autism or know somebody that does, you can come and support without that big time commitment of like, I got to volunteer all day, or I got to, write a check for $100. It's just a way to have fun while giving back. And it's been
Where does he do this? Outside somewhere.
Yeah, so there's an office park near us, and it has like a main street built into it, and there's like restaurants and other businesses in it. And he got the office park to let him shut that main street down, and they block it off for us every year and set the festival up there. Yeah, so there's all different ways. I mean, there's all those different things that you can do to fundraise. Another board member jumped on last year, and she started a Win a Wine Cellar event, which has been really popular with us. Yeah, so everybody comes, they pay $20 to get in. If they want to win the wine cellar, they can. If not, just don't bring a bottle of wine. Your ticket's still $20 no matter what. And then you collect all the wine. At the end of the night, whoever brought a bottle of wine, their name has a chance to be drawn. And that's only a 3-hour event. And we had a gentleman with autism come and perform for us at the event. And then we had like vendor raffles and vendors and some raffle baskets. So that was, it's just a 3-hour event. Again, not a lot of commitment, but enough to know that you're giving back. And then I always keep the education part of it. So I always put a did you know in the middle of the table, a statistic about autism, something about us, or some pictures of the kids or pictures of the center, just to make people realize that it's not about the wine, right? It's about like why you're giving back, and, to try to make that impact a little bit. And I think that always helps if you can insert yourself a little bit during a fundraiser to let them know why they're really there.
Yeah. I think sometimes it makes people feel better about spending money if they feel like it's going to a cause.
And I think that the local aspect is really attractive. I know you and I had talked a little bit, you said like New Jersey, like wherever you're at, like it seems like there's a lot of autism families in your area. And when they realize that it's affecting their neighbor and their friend, and that if their local business was trained, that your family next door might be able to go out to eat with you. If your library was trained, that was the other thing, we did a library right away, that, wouldn't be as afraid to go with Jason and so to the library. You know what I mean? So just things like that, when they start to realize the impact you're making and where the money's going, then they're like, okay, this is really going to help my neighbor or this kid in 20 years, so I think it does hit home with some people.
It's awesome. Well, you're doing a great thing for families. And I commend you for doing it. I think it's great. And I think it's very needed, but you don't realize it's needed until you become a parent yourself, and then you realize what you need.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And even at the conference that you came and spoke at, you did a wonderful job. 2 of my board members were there. They were working registration. You probably met them. And they were just like, we got to move with this. Like, they were so inspired after they realized what's going on out there, the layers and the effect that little conference had on people, how much they needed it, how happy they were. And, they, as much as their board members and give their input and help, they didn't realize really what they were helping until they saw it. So having that very active board is also going to help anybody else too that's really wanting to start something or start a little center. So
yeah, I put together my team, mostly all had autistic kids themselves and their teachers as well, and all that. And so, yeah, they were a great team. But I think my favorite part of being at your event was the downtime. And I hung out in the hall, sitting at a pub table with a group of moms. And we all were just talking, and talking about like our goals and dreams and, what we need and what we want and all that kind of stuff. And it's just nice to just that camaraderie, that just hanging out with the other moms, I thought was great.
Yeah, my favorite part was the round table at the very end, the open question and answer. I really liked that. I think that really brought a lot of people together and they felt a little bit relieved, that one woman stood up and said, does anybody here's husband not on the same page?
Yeah, and everybody burst out laughing.
Yeah, and we were like, oh, it automatically, it takes a lot of courage to stand up, and even that being your question.
Yep.
And it was like, and so it was like, and we did a survey and everything came back great, but it was more of that. More of that downtime, more of the roundtable, more of the open discussion.
Yeah.
That's what's needed even more. So, you could do that in support groups, but that big of a room and in that relaxed of a setting, knowing you're not on a time limit, just really gave them a lot of power.
Yeah.
And I know, from a personal standpoint, I would have cut off my right arm to have that. When Clayton was diagnosed, I would try to go to an event. And I remember this one conference I looked at, Cindy, it was $500. It was, no, I'm sorry. I said the wrong number. It was $150 for me to go. It was on a Wednesday from 9 to 5. So I had no childcare. I needed $150. I didn't have a job for $150. But if you had autism, you only had to pay $75.
Oh, gee, thanks.
And I was sitting there reading it and I'm like, I'm the people they're serving. And they're taking from me. And now I can't afford to go. So now I felt horrible, because now I can't afford to go. I don't have $150. I don't have a Wednesday. I don't have a childcare.
Right.
I don't have any of the criteria to go to this, but it's all the information I need. And so to have that conference and have it affordable and give them what they need was like, it had to be done. It was one of the things we planned, long ago. And it was really great to see that people needed it. And to hear your story, it was so much more involved than I knew, just from the little bit I had read. And to sit there and listen to that and watch people agree with you and shake their head and cry with you and, get motivation from your speech alone. Just having women come and tell their stories is probably a whole conference in itself, So there's so much to be done, so much work to be done. And there's room for everybody as long as it's going back to the right source. I think it can be done well, All
right. I've had you on here long enough. I'm going to let you go. But thank you. Your wealth of information. Yeah, and it's giving me more and more ideas. And, the more I talk to people, the more I listen, the more I just feel like there's more and more to be done. So
there is. And I will help you with anything. I'm not that far. I could probably throw a rock at you. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, and when I was on my way home at the airport, I happened to sit next to this kid wearing a Steelers hat at the airport. And all these people kept coming up to him saying, dude, congratulations. And they all wanted to take their picture with him. And after 15 minutes, I leaned over to him and I said, I'm sorry, I have no idea who you are. He says, oh, well, I was just, he had just been drafted to play for the Steelers and it was Kenny Pickett. And
no way.
Yeah, and I took my picture with him and I sent it to my son, and I was like, do you know who this is? He's like, oh my God, Mom, he was first draft pick. He's a quarterback. He's amazing. He's going to play for the Steelers. I'm like, well, he's my new BFF now. So, like,
oh,
so
wow,
now I feel
that's
like
crazy.
now I have to be an official Steelers fan. So now I'm going to come back
Yeah.
to Pittsburgh and go to a Steelers game and watch Kenny play.
That's awesome. If you want to send me that picture, I would love to put it. We created a little autism support group from the conference. I know those ladies would love to see it. I would love to see it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's on my,
he went to the University of Pittsburgh.
He told me.
Yeah,
yes.
so he's
and he lives in New Jersey, so he was flying home on my flight. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you for all the hoops you jumped through to get there and being part of it. And it was our first one. And
I enjoyed it.
If you ever want to do anything,
that I went.
Yeah, if you ever want to do anything together, let me know.
That would be great. That would be great. We'll stay in touch. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.